benefited by our leadership, vast experience in fields of changing climate, resource conservation, carbon sequestration, global warming, cropping system for food security, poverty elimination, and more. With your experience, I hope all will be a very benefit and will be able to enrich themselves from your kind words as well as from your experience, vast experience. Your talk, I hope, will benefit all the researchers and policyholders, not only in India, but across the globe, to utilize the limited resources which are declining day by day and transforming agriculture for minimizing risk and combating the ever-changing climate scenario. With this, I declare the session open and wish for its grand success. I would like to congratulate all the members of the organizing team of IIFSR for their untiring effort for conducting this event, especially Dr. L.R. Meena, Dr. Subhash, Dr. N. Subhash, Dr. Sunil Kumar, Dr. Nirmal, Dr. Meena, and all his associates, as well as the team who are helping him. Lastly, I thank and welcome all the registered and joint participants to this webinar. Thank you once again, and thank you once again to you, sir. Jai Hind, Jai Bharat. Thank you, Dr. Subhash. Dr. Subhash, please unmute.
Thank you, sir, for your welcome speech. And as per program, just I will introduce the keynote speaker today. All you are aware that Padma Shri Dr. Ratan Lal, the World Food Prize winner of 2020 and alumni of ICAR-IIFSR, New Delhi, and is a distinguished professor at the Ohio State University from 1987 to now, till now. And he was earlier worked as soil physicist at the International Institute of Tropical Agriculture, Nigeria, from 1970 to 1987. And his research topics mainly the carbon sequestration, soil health, conservation agriculture, soil restoration, and sustainable management. And he has authored around more than 1,000 articles in peer-reviewed journals, 550 books and book chapters, and written or edited around 100 books. And he was the president of Soil Science Society of America and International Union of Soil Sciences. He holds a chair in soil science and Goodwill Ambassador for Sustainability Issues for the Inter-American Institute for Cooperation in Agriculture, Costa Rica. At present, he is a member of the 2021 ICAR-IIFSR Science Committee and Action Track 3 with a focus on Coalition for Action on Soil Health. And he got several awards. The main awards include, he is a laureate of the GCHERA World Agriculture Prize 2018 and Glinka World Soil Prize in 2018 and Japan Prize 2019, US Avasti IFCO Prize of India 2019 and Arel Global Food Innovation Award of Canada 2020. And most of the things, several scientists from ICAR as well as from state agricultural universities did their PhD as well as their postdoctoral fellowship under his guidance. And most of the research papers in recent times, they referred Dr. Ratan Lal Sar's papers in the introduction part, in most of the papers. Thank you, sir. With this introduction, I am inviting Dr. Ratan Lal Sar for his keynote address.
Thank you. I will share the screen. Can you see it? Can you see the screen?
No, sir.
Not yet, sir.
Okay. I have to begin again.
Yes, sir. We just.
Can you see now?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. I put on view.
Yes.
Okay. Can you see the screen now?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's all visible, sir.
First of all, let me thank Dr. Punia, Dr. Subhash, members of the organizing committee for the opportunity and honor to be a speaker today. I know you had to organize this in the evening, and I'm very grateful. Since Dr. Subhash mentioned many of my prizes, I would like you to know that I received them because I'm an alumni of Punjab Agriculture University, Indian Agriculture Research Institute, and the Ohio State University. Those three great institutions. They are the one for which I was honored. I should also mention that all those awards were equal to 870,000 US dollars. And I added into it from my own personal account, 130,000, made it to 1 million and gave it to Ohio State. And Ohio State has created a Ratanlal Endowed Professorship. And also they have named, as you can see on the screen, Ratanlal Center for Carbon Management and Sequestration. So all that money has gone to research and education. And I never thought it was my own money because I was privileged to have 375 scientists from around the world who worked with me. Therefore, that money belonged to the research and not to me in person. With that, I would like to begin by mentioning the impact of human on the environment from time when the agriculture began about 8,000 BC, 10,000 years ago, till the Industrial Revolution of 1750, the impact was gradual. The population was less than 1 billion. From 1750 to about 1975, the impact was much greater, and it is very steep impact at present by 2021. And this impact, because it is so dramatic since 1750, people call this as Anthropocene. I think the Anthropocene actually began with the onset of agriculture. And this Anthropocene is caused by human population. Population of India is already reaching 1.4 billion. India will very soon be the most populous country of the world. On the globally, its population 7.8 billion. And energy used by population, water use, deforestation, emission of greenhouse gases, very serious problem of land and soil degradation, desertification, all those problems. And I think the answer lies in sustainable management of soils. At the UN Food System Summit that ended last week, I was privileged to be a member of 2 or 3 committees. And this was my message that not only soil, but also cropping systems, which is the subject of your workshop, your symposium. Soil and cropping system, they matter in minimizing the impact of humanity on planetary processes. And that is the part of my talk today. And in relation to the importance of cropping system, India's population represents 18% of the world population. Land area is only 2.4% of the world land area. Water resources that India have are only 4%. Cattle population of India is almost 30%, 31%. So feeding so many people and so many livestock on only 2.4% of the global land area and 4% of the water resources is a big challenge, especially water resources. Precipitation in India, average or everywhere is about 1170 millimeter per year. That translates into 4,000 kilometer cubed of water. That is equal to about 2,700 cubic meter per person. But the harnessing of those resources out of 4,000 kilometer cube, we harness only 370 kilometer cube, less than 10%. And that is an issue which we must address. Irrigation uses a lot of water, but still there's quite a large proportion that use unharnessed. Rainfall distribution in India is not very evenly distributed. 80% of the land receives rainfall of 750 millimeter per year, but the distribution is not uniform. Most rains occur in June to September. India, therefore, is prone to drought and flood syndrome. It is a flood during the monsoon season and drought when we doesn't have rain, which really is a symptom of land misuse and soil mismanagement. If the water received where it falls penetrates the soil and it saturates the soil's water holding capacity and also recharges the groundwater, the drought flood syndrome should not be as serious as it is. Therefore, recovering the water resources and proper utilization through better soil and cropping systems is very critical. I want to explain what soil is. Soil is a living thing. That's very important to recognize. Soil is a living entity. In fact, there is no life without soil and no soil without life. They have evolved together. And one other thing which I like to add from my side, that rhizosphere, the soil root interface at a nanoscale, is the only site in the universe which has the divine powers to convert death into life. That's the only site where death and life are a continuum, and soil has that capacity to transform death into life. And a rich soil, fertile soil, healthy soil should be full of organisms, especially microorganisms, because 25% of all biodiversity is in soil. And a rich soil should have tremendous amount of roots and biomass. Why biomass? Because that biomass is the food for organism in the soil. A living soil has about 5 tons of live weight of organism for a healthy soil. And those organisms require food. Their food, like our food, is organic matter. So taking away from soil all the organic matter is starving those living organisms, starving the soil. Therefore, that is a very important part to remember. Next, I want to talk about cropping system, especially the alternate cropping system. And the word alternate, it depends on the interpretation of the person who is doing that. But alternate means that it is something different than the normal cropping system. For example, the normal cropping system may be rice-wheat rotation, which has, as we know, serious problems of very high water utilization, of depletion of natural resources, of pollution because of the input of chemical and pesticide. Therefore, in some areas, a progressive, innovative, new alternate cropping system may be pertinent, may be needed. And that is what we think about is an alternate cropping system. Alternate to conventional, which have been good at some point in time, they did the job when they were implemented, but now is a time to change them. The food system, are coming to the United Nations food system, which was the same discussion. The food systems have been useful in the past, but now with very large population changing demand, there's a need to change them. And change is the main thing that we are thinking about. That brings me to something very proud of from the Indian perspective, the Green Revolution of India. From 1970 to 2017, the total cropland sown area net had remained the same, about 140 million hectare, but the gross sown area has gone up from 165 to almost 200 million hectare because of increasing cropping intensity, better cropping system. Net irrigated area has increased from 30 million hectare to almost 70 million hectare, and fertilizer use has gone up 12 times from 2 million tons to 26 million tons. So agriculture has been very successful, and that is a part which we need to talk about. How could it be even more successful through the cropping system and farming system. And here there is a difference between cropping system and farming system. A cropping system refers to the type and sequence of crops grown and practices used for growing them. That's a cropping system. Not only the crops, but the practices used for growing them also. It encompasses all cropping sequences, practices over the space and time based on the available technology of crop production. Farming system, on the other hand, is the organization of the farm and of all the enterprise in relation to each other. So farming system is a much broader, much bigger. So India has done tremendous progress in relation to cropping and farming system in the past and soil management. Food grain production went up by a factor of 6 from 1947 to 2020. The horticulture production went up by a factor of 10. Milk production went up by a factor of 9. Fish production went up by a factor of 13. Grain export has increased to 20 million tons for about $40 billion. Grain buffer stock have increased to 50 million tons. There has been a tremendous reduction in poverty, but still there's a 20% of people are poor. Even one person poor and one person hungry is one too many. And to alleviate hunger and poverty, farming system, cropping system, soil management are very critical components that we must address. India's fertilizer consumption, as I already mentioned, went up tremendously. Irrigation water use went up. In terms of pesticide use went up tremendously. And the reason I'm mentioning these three inputs, they were very critical, they are very important, they are very precious. But if not used properly, they can also be liability. And that's a part which is very important to remember. I'd like to mention here that the difference between a remedy and a poison is the dose and the time of application of that dose. So if the pesticides and fertilizers and other chemicals are not used properly, at the right time, right rate, right place, right method of placement, they can become poisonous to the people and the environment. And that is a part which we must recognize very, very critically. They can also cause soil degradation, water erosion, wind erosion, water logging, salinity and salinity. India has tremendous problem of soil degradation, also the environmental degradation, affecting almost 140 to 150 million hectares. At the same time, while the soil organic matter content should be somewhere between 2.5 to 3.5%, and if it's less, the productivity yield is lower. Most of the cropland soils of northwestern India, UP, Rajasthan, Haryana, Punjab, organic matter content is generally less than 5%, often as low as 0.2%. where it should be 10 times more than that. Therefore, the cropping system have to be changed. Soil management practices have to be changed. And that lower level leads to also emission of greenhouse gases, especially from the fertilizers. India has tremendous agricultural component that impacts greenhouse gases, both from livestock, which I mentioned was the largest, 30% of world livestock is in India. Synthetic fertilizer, manure, all of those, especially if not used properly. Remember 4R, right rate, right time of application, right method of application, right placement of fertilizer. All those are very critical. If not, nitrogen especially is emitted into the atmosphere as N2O, and N2O has 310 times more global warming potential than CO2 has. But CH4 from the cattle and manure is the same thing, 21 times more global warming potential. Therefore, it is not the problem with technology, the problem lies in the misuse of the technology. When fertilizer, pesticides, herbicides, tillage cropping system are not used properly, and that misuse of technology without wisdom, without science, without proper techniques of use of that technology. Remember, if the medicine is not used properly, it's a poison. It is the poisonous part of misuse of technology that has created the problem. Over-fertilization, unbalanced fertilization, indiscriminate use of pesticide, excessive and flood-based irrigation, unnecessary plowing, in-field burning of crop residue, uncontrolled grazing. These are the problems which have created the environmental issues. There is nothing wrong with using fertilizer if they're used properly. There's nothing wrong with using pesticide if they're used properly and judiciously. Nothing wrong with irrigation if it can be drip irrigation. Plowing only if it is needed, not burning crop residue. Why? Why are cattle grazing everywhere? Why not control grazing? So it's a grazing is good. Grazing, integration of livestock with crops and trees is excellent. But indiscriminate use is not up. And all of those also lead to the so-called misuse of water resources. While our own Upanishads say Kshati, Jal, Pava, Gagan, Samira, these 5 elements from which the human body is made of, and improper use is what lead to the drought flood syndrome. On one side, we have a drought. After the drought is gone, we have rain and we have miseries of the flood, symptoms of land misuse. So at the same time, now about 50 years after the Green Revolution started, and I remember it, I was a student those days, there had been some concern at present. And concern now it's mostly cereal centric, rice and wheat. That was the main focus. It has been based on heavy use of inputs. It's driven by subsidies and procurement. Environmental degradation has caused the problem. Therefore, it's a time to revisit. The difference, I will never criticize Green Revolution. It saved hundreds of millions of people from starvation. It did what it was supposed to do. But it's a time to revisit, time to rethink in the context of present situation and see how we can improve it. It also led to dilution effect, and dilution effect means when the nutritional quality of the food that is produced decreases because of increase in production and the inputs of and the CO2 fertilization, the nutrient content, 17 micronutrients, the protein content, the major nutrients, NPK and calcium, magnesium, their concentration in food, diet, edible part can decrease. And India not only has a problem of almost 200 million people having less access to food, but serious problem of micronutrient deficiency in the diet, malnutrition. And therefore, food grown on a healthy soil should be very good consideration of cropping system. 36% of the population affected and government spending a lot of resources, yet we have a problem. And one other part that I emphasized in the UN Food System Summit, probably should have emphasized more than I did because I'm not quite sure that it was very well understood. And that is something that the health of soil, plants, animal, human, environment, and the planet is interconnected. John Muir, an American philosopher, he said, when you try to pick anything up in the nature, you find it is hitched to everything else. I'll repeat that. When in nature, you try to pick one thing, you find it is hitched to everything else. That's exactly what this diagram says. When soil health is degrading, it degrades everything else in the universe. And there is a strong connection between the human health and soil health. Human health is in fact a fingerprint of soil health. Human are mirror image of the soil they live on. And when humans are miserable, they pass their miseries to the soil and the soil reciprocates. And this vicious cycle of reciprocation does not end. It can only be broken with an entry point of restoring soil health, because that's the foundation on which all the terrestrial life depends. Therefore, restoration of soil organic matter content above the threshold level of about 3.5 to 4%, at least 2%, is absolutely necessary to improve nutritional quality of the food produced. Diet and our Upanishad, our Shastra, our scripture, they say when diet is wrong, medicine is of no use, and when diet is correct, medicine is of no need. That is more valid now than when our rishis wrote it in the Ayurveda. And consumption of healthy and sustainable diet improves the health. It reduces greenhouse gas emission. It improves water resources. It strengthens biodiversity. It's a win-win-win-win option. Unfortunately, I'm very sad, as our income is going up, we try to imitate Western culture and Western. Some things are good to follow and imitate, but certainly our diet habits, our many other good things, we don't need to give up. I think I see that animal-based diet is improving 15%. That's good, but only in moderation. Everything in moderation is helpful. Therefore, toward food system transformation, and that was the part of the UN Food System Summit, one of the most important parts is restoring soil and biophysical environment. Food production must lead to restoration of soil and environment. We must improve social equity, address human dimensions, adopt prudent governance, identify and implement site-specific game-changing solutions on the cropping system or soil management, and we must strengthen human resource development along with creating global science policy interface for sustainable food systems. Technological innovations between 2020 and 2050, which are expected to happen, they must happen, especially with the growing population. Number one is recarbonization of the soil and biosphere. Pro-nature agriculture. Agriculture, unfortunately, has not been pro-nature. We must save land for nature, especially water, land, steep lands, which are not good for cropping production. They should be put back under trees and under perennial vegetation. Climate resilient agriculture, eco-intensification, rhizospheric processes, phytobiome management, robotic and soil-less agriculture. Robotic and soil-less agriculture, the human drudgery, the human hardship that traditional agriculture provides, we can improve upon it. Urban agriculture, sky farming, space farming, soil processes under hypergravity conditions. Why hypergravity? Because we are already sending human to Mars and Moon. Precision agriculture, the nexus, interconnectivity. Remember that slogan, the health of soil, plants, animal, people, environment, and the planet. That is the nexus. Nutrition sensitive farming. Cropping system must produce nutrient dense, nutrient rich food. And farming soil, I made it red, with plants, that's the cropping system. When we talk about farming, it's a farming soil. That means soil health, manage soil health. And with plants that emit molecular-based signals for remote sensing, so that plants can talk to us. A cropping system in which plant can communicate with manager through molecular-based signal. I'm hungry, I'm thirsty, I'm short of calcium, I'm short of micronutrients, I have a drought stress, locust is attacking me, do something about it. And of course, farming carbon. Carbon becomes a commodity that can be produced. So we have a farming carbon-based cropping systems. And then, of course, the One Health concept, which I mentioned already many times, that is very critical, the health of soil, plants, animal, people, environment, and the planet. We must be talking about negative emission agriculture. I must state this here. I hear many times emission neutral agriculture. No, it's negative emission agriculture. If emission is only neutral, you are not producing much. What I mean is, if the productivity is only 1 ton of grains per hectare and you are spending 500 kilogram of carbon per hectare to produce it. That agriculture cannot feed anybody. That agriculture cannot do anything with the climate. It has to be negative emission agriculture, where you reduce carbon emissions from farm operation and you increase yield and therefore sequester carbon in the terrestrial ecosystem, in soil, in trees, in wetlands, in mineland, in many other degraded land. That is the idea. The idea is to make land and agriculture negative emission. Take carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and put in the land. Not neutral. Neutral is not good enough. Please think again. And the food system is not just producing food. That's only one part. Transporting, processing, distributing, using, preparing, consuming, and disposing the waste, recycling the waste. This all is a food system. And those food systems can be from agriculture, fisheries, forestry. So we are talking about farming system here. And the limitation of the present food system, especially in India, it has failed to end hunger and malnutrition. In spite of that, green revolution, white revolution, blue revolution, horticulture revolution, in spite of all that revolution, we still have 200 million people who have no food. Therefore, we have failed. Ask those people who are hungry. We haven't provided adequate nutritious food. Nutritious food, many people cannot afford it. And that is another failure. We have degraded soils, polluted water, aggravated global warming, dwindled biodiversity, denuded landscape. So producing food is not just enough. There are many other things that need to be done. Although we are very proud of our revolutions, we have a long way to go. And that we should never forget. And the greenhouse gas emission have to be taken care of. Therefore, we are at a time of transformation of cropping system and food system. We must restore soil and biophysical environment, improve social equality, adopt prudent governance, identify and implement site-specific solution, and of course, create the policy. And one of that form is the regenerative agriculture. Regenerative agriculture inspired by eco-innovation. It's powered by non-carbon energy. It's driven by a circular economy and green infrastructure, and is supported by the recarbonization of the terrestrial biosphere as the bedrock of sustainable development. Remember the last statement, recarbonization of the terrestrial biosphere, putting carbon back in soil and the land, which we have lost tremendously. We must put it back. And that's what it means: continuous soil cover, soil never left bare, no certain disturbance. It means integrated nutrient management. Putting fertilizer alone is not a substitute for good cropping system, good soil management. Putting pesticide is not a substitute for good soil health when it becomes a disease suppressive soil. And that requires complex cropping systems, complex farming system with cover crops, and with the idea of restoring soil organic matter through and producing more and more from less and less input. That's the slogan, produce more. So cropping system objective is to produce more from less. That's what a good cropping system is, so that the soil organic matter content is improved, and with that, water resources, climate, food security, and poverty, sustainable development goal, land degradation neutrality that Prime Minister Modi mentioned, that they will restore 6 million hectares by 2030. We are signatory on global agenda. And the soil organic matter content is really the heart of the cropping system objective and strategy. We are also talking about nature positive cropping system, nature positive. Do not degrade nature. The idea is to restore nature, to improve it, protect, manage, and restore, strengthen biodiversity, improve water quality. Dumping chemicals, fertilizer indiscriminately and ruining water quality is not prudent. Adopting again negative emission farming, please, not neutral, negative emission. Reduce input of chemical, judicious chemical. Remember, nowhere I have said don't use them. use an aspirin, one aspirin, not 100 aspirin, because one is needed to cure the headache, not 100. 100 will cure many other things that you don't want to be cured. Use biostimulants and organic amendments wherever needed. Promote biocircular economy, support One Health concept, and use digital innovation to make agriculture more. So alternate cropping systems are conservation agriculture with 5 pillars: no tillage, crop residue mulch, no burning, integrated nutrient management, complex cropping system, and crop rotations, and integration of crops with trees and livestock. That together is conservation agriculture, similar to regeneration agroecology principle, agroforestry, integration of crops with trees, and practices with a positive soil ecosystem carbon budget. C and PK, I'll come back to that in a moment, and balanced use of plant nutrients. I am very sad to hear that nitrogen is subsidized, P and K, calcium, magnesium are not. Therefore, our soils are losing, having a negative P and K budget, but excessive use of nitrogen. Flood irrigation that started in Indus Valley perhaps about 5,000 years ago. We are still doing it. Simply we replaced a Persian wheel with a bullock or with donkey or camel with a pump or electric or diesel. Does not mean modernization. Does not mean science. Science is drip fertigation, where you save water. We should have banned flood irrigation, drip fertigation. Crop residue mulch should be left on the soil, completely covering the ground all the time. Soil is a living entity. It also requires covering like we require clothes, exactly the same way. Keep the ground covered. And we must think about carbon-based fertilization, planting crops through the residue, C coming before NPK. And if we have more C in the ground, the need for NPK will become less. I want to say something else about the cropping systems in India. India is endowed with a long coastline. Coastline of the world is 440,000 kilometers, of which India has 7,517 kilometers. And this rich coastline of India is seriously degraded. Sundarban, one of the greatest natural heritage, are depleted, degraded, polluted. And why? Because the upland cropping systems are not good. That's why. The upland cropping system are affecting the coastal line and coastal ecosystem and all the blue life and the blue carbon, everything else. That's the alternate cropping system. Cropping system and upland watershed, they are affecting the coastal ecosystem, and the solution lies in managing the upland cropping systems. Drastic perturbation affect the coastal line, hydrologic cycle. It decouples elemental cycling of carbon, nitrogen, water, and sulfur. It perturbs the carbon cycle, leading to global warming. It accelerates erosion, transport of sediment. It pollutes water. It leads to loss of biodiversity. It degrades soils and desertification and ruins the coastal ecosystem at the same time as the upland system. Remember the interconnectivity. When you try to lift one thing in nature, you find it hitched to everything else. Unfortunately, the coastal ecosystems are also hitched to a cropping system practiced thousands of miles away upland in the watershed. Agriculture practices on inland watershed which degrade the coastal ecosystems or conversion of natural to agricultural ecosystem by applying inputs of fertilizer and chemicals, monoculture, excessive grazing, biomass burning, heavy appreciation mining, everything, wetland drainage. Everything is affecting, and it should be very careful. Heavy metal effluent, especially, it has a tremendous impact on the life in the coastal ecosystems. Therefore, in the upland cropping system, we must adopt conservation agriculture. I've gone over it, but I'm putting them in the context now, not only just of food production, but health of coastal ecosystem. And then how to carbon sequestration, how to use soil survey and land use planning. The soil survey and land use planning has done a great job, but the objective is not simply to map. The objective is to improve soil health and carbon sequestration, both organic and inorganic. The soil survey and land use planning can help us identify hotspots where the potential for carbon sequestration, both organic and inorganic. I have talked so much about organic. This is inorganic carbon, secondary carbonates, calcium carbonate, magnesium carbonate, what we call caliche in dry, semi-arid climates and arid climates. Inorganic carbon is also very important. And we must have policy that we can provide farmer income. So carbon becomes another commodity, like you can sell wheat, corn, soybean, milk, any other produce, we can also sell carbon. So it can create another income stream for farmers. Farmer get rewarded for putting carbon in soil. How much reward? $130 per ton. That means $35 per ton of CO2, $130 per ton of C, $35 per ton of CO2. How did I get this? I multiply this by 12 and divide by 44. Remember CO2 formula and take the molecular weight. And farmers should be rewarded appropriately, not. Now, urbanization is another part, just like I emphasized coastal. I think urban is another part. India is rapidly urbanizing, and the uplands are being converted to urban ecosystem, which have more emission than even agriculture. Rural lands are becoming less and less. Urban lands are increasing. Deforestation is also happening because of ad hoc urbanization. And although our father of the nation said future of India lies in the villages, unfortunately, the villages are disappearing. Yes, modernization is needed, but modernization does not mean ad hoc. The cities in India, New Delhi from 1950 to 2030 has gone up by a factor of 30 population, from 1.2 million to 36 million. Calcutta by factor of 4, Bombay by factor of 9, Pune by 10, Hyderabad 12, Bangalore 21, Chennai, most cities, which leads a lot of bricks. A scene like this and a scene like this driving along the roadside are very common. Can you imagine? It took hundreds of thousands of years to make a foot of topsoil, and we scalp it unceremoniously, large scale brick making. I understand that we need building material, but does it have to be removing topsoil from everywhere? Cannot each districts or each tehsil select a site where you can mine soil for brick making deeper and deeper and deeper rather than scalping topsoil from everywhere? Cannot we find alternate construction material? Taking away the topsoil is a crime against nature, especially for brick making, and the amount of things being taken for brick making in India, where the population is increasing 11.5 million per year, is tremendous. And there should be a law about it, that this finite topsoil cannot be taken away. And at the same time, more important part, all those mega cities with more than 10 million people have to be fed. And why cannot we somehow create cities which are low carbon cities or even post carbon cities? We do not burn fossil fuel in city. We try to have solar panel on every roof. Some kind of non-carbon fuel sources, and urban farming based on soil-less system. And I'm going to talk about what soil-less systems are. Because our cropland is shrinking, because we are causing global warming, we are increasing water scarcity, we have a growing urban population, it necessitates soil scientists and agronomists to think about alternate cropping systems. And what are those alternate cropping systems? For cities, they are soil-less systems: aquaculture, aquaponics, hydroponics, aeroponics. You got to think differently. Why differently? We have a humongous problems at hand. We cannot be conventional. We have to be thinking differently. Sky farming and urban agriculture has to be transformative to feed people. Those nutrients coming into these cities have to be an asset, a resource, and recycle them rather than, and this can be particularly important where Rajasthan, other dry areas where, now the last thing I want to mention about the cropping system is saving, producing more from less. We have irrigated land area, 70 million hectare. We use 200 kilometer cube of water. While the irrigated area should increase over time, but the water used must decrease, change from flood to drip irrigation. We must have a plan. Fertilizer use, we are using 30 million ton now. The use efficiency is 30%. We must increase fertilizer efficiency, not the rate. Improve fertilizer, therefore the total amount used should go less over time. In-field burning, we burn 100 million tons of crop residue. By 2030, there should be a goal of zero burning. By dialogue, by discussion, by cooperation with farmer, by explaining them, not by coercion. Pesticides use 56 million ton. If you have a healthy soil and use pesticides by precision methods, we should decrease them over time. And yet the cereal yield, which is only 2 tons, should be doubled very quickly. The post-harvest losses, we have 34%, and that's a part of the farming system. Please do not consider post-harvest losses not part of farming. They are integral part of it. If you're wasting so much and producing so much, that's not a good science. That's not a good strategy. We have organic manure at the moment, 200 million tons. We should definitely more than double that over time. Certainly 50% more by 2030, 10 years from now. We can do it. We have to do it. We have no choice but to use the best and save the rest for nature. Do not pollute nature. Remember, pro-nature. We have to be pro. Soil is a living entity. Do not kill it. Killing any living thing is a crime, especially in our culture. Lastly, I would like you to please remember that soil stewardship and care must be embedded in every fruit and vegetable eaten, in each grain ground into the bread consumed, in every cup of water used, in every breath of air inhaled, in every scenic landscape cherished. Don't forget it. That is the alternate farming system. That's the improved cropping system that you're looking for. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for providing a thought-provoking and scintillating lecture presentation. And I think all our participants enlightened with your presentation. And you have covered alternate cropping system definition too, and what are the about the availability of natural resources and how much degraded the soil, and what are the availability of natural resources, and also they listed the misuse of technologies and which have aggravated the environmental problems, and the dilution effect explained very well, and which will be highly useful to our researchers. And also one particular aspect is the human soil health nexus. That will be a hot topic in future. And also they listed the technological innovations for 2020 to 2050. This is very much needed for our young researchers for their research in future. And also another thing is farming carbon. That is also a very good aspect, new term we are hearing from you, sir. And another thing is the carbon, the circular economy. And my question here is circular economy. Already our farmers are small and marginal farmers. They are already doing the circular economy, but how we can interfere or how we can modify their system or their farming system or cropping system to get more circular economy, circularity in their system. That may be the one question. And another thing is you have listed the soil-less cropping systems. What are the activities we can do without soil, and also the carbon-based NPK. And sir, there are several questions in the Q&A. And the first question is from Dr. Ravi Shankar, principal scientist from our institute, and will be able to provide quality and safe food for 1.7 billion population in India by 2050, and also feed the increasing cattle population with pro-nature agriculture, organic farming. Sir.
Thank you. First of all, your point of circular economy. Yes, Indian farmers are very wise, definitely so. But when they are burning the crop residue, when they are taking away the residue and not putting the cattle dung back on the land, the circular part has many loopholes. It's not quite circular then.
Okay.
And I think there is a lot of scope for improvement. And as I mentioned, burning 100 million tons of crop residue every year is not circular, not putting back. So certain improve. Now, farmers, why they are doing it? Because they're desperate. So we must address their desperateness. We must provide them technology. We must provide them alternate systems. And we must make sure that their needs are met so they really become circular. Now, when a soil is depleted already from historic land misuse of centuries and its organic matter content, nutrient reserves have gone down, what are you circulating then? There's nothing to circulate. So circular economy works only when the basic natural resource is restored properly. Then circular works. But if it's already depleted and you're still burning it, I'm sorry, it's not circular. Okay. The second part, whether organic farming, in my lecture, you did not hear the word organic. I did use the word regenerative agriculture. I did use the word conservation agriculture. I did say the difference between poison and remedy, the dose and time. So I'm not 100% sure that organic is the only solution. I think organic has a place. I think in some places, organic is very important. It has an economic niche. But the problem of feeding 1.7, 1.5 billion people in India and on a very limited 2.4% of the land area and getting stuck that thou shalt only do organic, I think we have to think again. Use science, it's like medicine. Use medicine properly. To say that we will not use any medicine as long as we use it properly. So the key part is using technology with wisdom. Yes, someplace organic will work and we must use it properly. In the other case, we use judicious use of chemicals wherever needed, supplemental. But when your soil are depleted and poor and you do not want to add nutrients from anywhere else, then we have a problem.
Sir, thank you, sir. Another question from Dr. Sanjay Arora. I think the feasible and suitable options for sequestering carbon in sodic soils where organic matter is unstable much more as compared to normal soil.
Organic matter, the reason it is organic matter, it cannot be stable. The stable organic matter is coal that you mine from mineland. That's a stable organic matter. It has no. So organic matter is useful only as long as it is unstable. And why it is unstable mean it's dynamic, it's changing. And why it is changing? Because microorganisms are using it as a food. So to assume that the organic matter has to be completely stable, doesn't decompose, doesn't emit CO2 is not correct strategy. Organic matter is useful only when it is dynamic. Organic matter has to decompose. It has to evolve gases because the soil, animals, soil biota are eating it. The strategy is to put more than what is required by the soil organism. More than that. And whatever you put more, it goes through the organism, then the process of their metabolic byproducts, they react, their metabolic byproduct, they react with soil clay and form organo-mineral complex. That part is stable.
Okay, sir.
It's a very different thinking about the organic matter content.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Another question from anonymous attendee. Please explain impact of biofertilizer application on soil biodiversity and in carbon cycle.
Anything which is a biofertilizers is very good for soil organisms. And if we can, supposing we want to put 100 kilogram of nitrogen per hectare. So for equivalent amount, if we can put 10 tons of manure to get 100 tons of nitrogen, that's a lot better, absolutely no question about it, than putting from chemical fertilizer. But the question is, for 140 million hectare or 200 million hectare of net farmland, gross farmland area in India, do we have enough manure to put at 5 ton or 10 ton or 4 ton or per hectare on every annual basis? The answer is no.
Okay.
We do not. Even with so many cattle, we do not. So 100% recycling without putting other supplemental probably is not the best option at the moment.
Sir, another question is, as you told, One Health through science-driven integrated farming system. Can we address One Health through science-driven integrated farming system? What parameters should be considered for this in integrated farming system?
The One Health concept is certainly based on integrated farming systems. In fact, if you have a monoculture and intensive use of chemicals and pesticide, that One Health system does not work. The One Health system, the health of soil is the basis, is the foundation. And the health of soil means returning the carbon back to the soil, C and PK. Remember C and PK. C comes before and P. So as long as the C becomes 2.5% carbon, 2% carbon, 4% organic matter in soil, the need for additional chemical will progressively become less and less. So it's the and one of the best way to integrate is integrate system is when crops are grown in combination with grazing and trees, and everything is recycled.
Yeah. Sir, another question from A.K. Mishra, Varanasi. What strategies need to be taken for reducing malnutrition of 200 million people for 2025? What about your opinions?
Malnutrition, remember I mentioned diet. I even gave example from Vedas that when diet is good, medicine is of no need. When diet is poor, medicine is of no use. So where does these micronutrients, 17 micronutrients and vitamins and protein, where does it come? It comes from good food. It should not come from a pill. It should not come from a chemical swallowing of pill. They have to come from good food. And good food comes from healthy soil. When our soils are devoid of micronutrients, I many times see topsoil has been removed for brick making, and in the subsoil, which is simply sand, you put water and nitrogen and growing some crop. Is the crop grown on soil without micronutrients in it and organic matter? Is the food produced on that is healthy? Absolutely not. It's devoid of all the micronutrients. So somewhere the soil should be the source of micronutrients and vitamins and protein that are in the edible parts. So our food must, remember, I use the word, our cropping system must be nutrition sensitive. That's exactly what it means. The cropping system must produce nutrition-rich food. And that's the only way malnutrition can be abolished from India or elsewhere in the world. Grow food on a healthy soil. Food label, whenever you buy, I sometimes think when you buy wheat or corn or soybean in a market, and we pay for every quintal or for every man or for every whatever, should we be knowing the nutritional quality of that food and the soil which is healthy and it has produced a healthy nutrition sensitive crop? So every seller of the crop and every buyer must know what the nutritional value of that food, not the amount itself. And the price should be based on the nutritional value of the food.
Yeah. Sir, if you have time, then I will take up more questions, sir.
Maybe one more question, and then I have some other commitment.
Okay, sir. Then one question is, how crop residue from Dr. R. Kodar, BCKB, how crop residue management in micro irrigation practices helps in natural resource management?
Well, micro irrigation is going to be pipes which are buried probably 20, 30 centimeter below the soil. And from that is where, and if you're not plowing, or even if you are doing some farm operation which are shallow, 5-10 centimeter deep, and your pipe is 20 centimeter deep, there should be no interference. And when the crop residue is there, it suppresses evaporation, it increases water infiltration, it will reduce water loss, and the need for irrigation will become less. In fact, one of the projects we are having is when you improve the water retention capacity of the soil by increasing organic matter content. With the soil with more organic matter content, have a more water holding capacity. So the need for irrigation also becomes less with high organic matter content in soil, just as the need for nitrogen and fertilizer becomes less with healthy soil.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, just can I ask one thing, sir? Just yeah, sir. One question has come from Bihar that they are saying that 80% area is under rice wheat cropping system, and the mindset of the farming community is towards mostly nitrogenous fertilizers. So, what the agricultural researchers can do for changing the mindset of such farmers?
Well, the mindset can only be changed by discussion, dialogue, and demonstration. You demonstrate under on-farm condition alternative to rice wheat cropping system, and you demonstrate to them under on-farm condition that the alternative system are as profitable as the conventional systems are. I think there's no substitute for demonstration of actual things. And simply talking to them or simply saying, if you don't do it, we are going to punish you, is not going to work. You know what happened in Delhi. I used to watch that with very sad situation. We do not want to have coercion, we want to have dialogue. And dialogue on equal basis. It's not a boss talking to a peasant, no. They are better than. I think let them know we are serving you. We are your servant, and your interests are our interest, and we suggest that we can do something together better for you and better for the country and better for the world. I think that's the only way to work. So it is really dialogue, it's a discussion. Farmers are very intelligent, they're very wise, they understand, but they are desperate when they do not have options. So if you do not demonstrate them that here is a viable option, you can substitute flooded puddled rice with a direct sown aerobic rice. You will have probably 10% lower yield, but you will save water, you will save labor, your profit margin is still high. And that demonstration to show them that your profit is high with aerobic rice, or when you are substituting rice for something else, vegetable maybe if you're near the city, or maybe other crops which are more productive, maybe leguminous crops which produce protein as well as oilseed crops. I think showing them real, true, viable alternative rather than simply talking. Translate your words into action.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you very much, sir.
Oh, thank you very much, sir, for answering all our questions. There are still so many questions are there, but because of the time limit, we will compile all the questions and send to you, sir, for your comments as well as in future guidance. And thank you once again. And I request Dr. Lalit Kumar from ICAR-IIFSR for formal vote of thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Subhashji. Most respected Honorable Speaker and Padam Shri, Dr. Ratan Lalji, Dr. Punia, Dr. Meena, Dr. Subhashji, all the participants from India and abroad, and scientific community of ICAR-IIFSR, ladies and gentlemen. Sir, it is my privilege to propose a vote of thanks and acknowledge the nice and informative lecture delivered by world-famous scientist Dr. Latanda on very burning topic, that is alternate cropping and food system to conserve resources and address global issue. Sir, on behalf of I and the entire organizing committee of this webinar, I sincerely thanks to you for delivering a nice and very informative talk on alternative cropping and food system with a wish to conserve resources. Sir, I am very much sure that the participants must be benefited a lot by the talk delivered by you. Again, sir, on behalf of I and the entire organizing committee of the webinar, my sincere thanks and a special mention to our director, Dr. A.S. Pawar, being the catalyst that inspired us to do best for this meeting and stand as a pillar of power with deep sense of appreciation. Sir. I am also highly thankful to our organizing secretaries, L.R. Meena and Dr. Subhash, for taking grave interest and pain since past 1.5 months for making necessary arrangements and conducting this webinar. Sir, I also express my sincere thanks to all the participants of this webinar for their timely registration and attending this webinar and taking keen interest. I am also thankful to all the organizing committee members and the scientists of our institute for their kind cooperation and attending this meeting. I also express my sincere thanks to our organization, that is ICAR, for providing permission and support to conduct this webinar. Finally, sir, I also very much thankful to our AKMU unit for our institute, especially to Dr. Sunil and Mr. Vimal for making all necessary arrangements for this meeting, sir. Sir, at last not least, I thanks once again all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, sir, for your presence. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, sir. बहुत अच्छा हुआ. Congratulations to all of
ये
you.
comments chat में है ये सब note.
Yes, sir. ये question and answer जो है that we will send to Ratanlal sir mail.
Yes, yes.
And then we will send it back to the all the जिन्होंने भी पूछा है. Those who have asked the questions, we will send it back to him.
Sir, ये हमने तो ये copy किया है question and answer. वो कैसे हो?
I will select and I will copy it. Close मत करिएगा सर, मैं copy.
नहीं अभी close नहीं कर रहा. वो भी करना है chat box में जो भी questions है.
All the questions I will copy and then I will send it to you.
नहीं चार्ट बॉक्स का तो सेव हो जाएगा सर, लेकिन ये क्वेश्चन एंड आंसर में
आप मैं सभी कर लेता हूँ and then I will send it to all the panelists here ना. Okay.
Live streaming.
Dear participants, please join tomorrow at 10:20. Okay,
yes.
Because we will start the session at exactly 10:30.
Yes, absolutely.